Welcome to Spider-Verse Minute, the tri-weekly podcast where we watch Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse 1 minute at a time. I'm Sean Slater.
And I'm his sister Caroline.
And today we're watching Minute 109, which opens with some sweet dune buggy moves and ends a minute later with some additional voices.
I have titled this minute, A Final Thank You, which is a lot more heartfelt than the start and end you gave.
Before we get to those final thank yous.
The emotional parts, let's talk about the sweet sick moves on the dune buggies.
Yeah, I like how there's just, the dune buggies jumping over the giant Spider-Man, and he's just like, hey, please don't do that.
I know, it's great. Or he's like, hey, those are some sick dune buggy moves.
I also, I know these are sort of the, after images, but I like to just picture a bunch of dune buggies, like in a race chasing each other.
Pretty fun.
The other cool thing in this part of the minute, this marching band drum line thing, it looks like there's just trumpets in there, so I don't know, maybe it's a jazz drum line.
Oh, maybe.
But I like the I would love to hear Spider-Man drum line and see what cool things they could do with that using their web slinging abilities.
Yeah. I love how it ends with very similar to how the actual movie ended, with a spray painting of Miles' Spider-Man logo. The absurdity and craziness of the credits sequence ends with a spray painting of the title of the movie.
Yeah, and I like the effect they use of drawing the color, the single lines outlining the name. Yeah, it is a great motif, and then the music cuts out here, and it goes silent. And I really I know they usually do that for the tribute stuff that they do.
This hits a little harder, I think, because it was just such fun pump up music right before, and then it goes silent, and then you see the Stan Lee quote with his glasses. And I remember the first time I've seen that in the theaters, I started bawling.
Yeah, because this was the first Marvel movie after he had passed away. It was it was just over a month after he died.
Yeah, I remember a lot of people were like, what a great first movie after his death was Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse. And a lot of people were like, it's a shame he never got to see it. And people were like, no, he got to see an early cut of it.
Yeah, I was a little sad that they have the single, or the Stan Lee quote and the little tribute to him, and then they just have the thank you to Stan Lee and Steve Ditko. And I really wish they had a separate single thing for Steve Ditko, because he had also passed away that year. He still had a pretty big impact, and I know that's one of the criticisms with Stan Lee is he sometimes, it feels like he gets an overinflated amount of credit for a lot of the Marvel stuff, and so it would have been nice to just have some of Steve Ditko, a bit more of an acknowledgement for him.
Yeah.
Even though he didn't work on Spider-Man nearly as long as Stan Lee did.
And that might have been part of the reason that they decided to do a quote on for Stan Lee and not one for Steve, just because, when you think Spider-Man, so many people associate him with Stan Lee more, just because he was with Spider-Man longer, as opposed to Steve. But I also get what you're saying, and I think that's a valid criticism as well.
Yeah.
I love that moment so much. I think they're just, it's almost like a final send-off to both of them in a way, especially to Stan Lee. But it just feels like a final send-off to them at the end of this movie, and it just makes me emotional every time I see it, because I think it's so sweet, and the fact that they say thank you to both of them and not just Stan. They put Stan's quote, but they do say thank you to both of them. You know what? They could have just said thank you, Stanley, but no, they said both thank you to Stanley, and I'm not going to try to pronounce his last name. Steve.
Ditko,
thank you.
Yeah, and I like how they still stylized the, traditional part of the credits, and it's not just, Times New Roman font on black on white, and they still have, they use the comic book font, and
the background's pretty cool too.
Yeah, I liked that about it.
I also really it's not my favorite song from the album, but I do really like the song they chose for the last credits too, which is Way Up by Jaden Smith.
Yeah, I think this is one of my favorite songs on the album.
It's a really good one, to be fair. I think I like Elevate a little more just because I think it's a bit more of a pump-up song for me. But I do also like Way Up. It's just personally not one of my favorites.
Well, you're allowed to be wrong.
The one credit I love pointing out, because I can never figure out which character he actually is in the movie, is Post Malone is a bystander in the movie. Like, he has a spoken line.
Yeah.
I can never for the life of me figure out which bystander he is, and it bothers me. Like, I want to know!
I believe he's one of the ones that takes the pictures. He's the one that says, I believe it's a Banksy.
See, I thought that might have been him, but then I also thought it might have been one of the ones at the crowd at the end.
I remember them pointing that out in the animators commentary when that came up. Is they had mentioned that he was one of the ones taking the pictures, being like, I'm pretty sure it's a Banksy.
Okay. See, I remember the first time I saw his name in the credits, I'm like, hold up a second. I knew he worked on Sunflower, but Post Malone also has a line in this movie?
Yeah. I like some of the other like character titles they have. I always love reading through this part of the
Yeah, especially for like the background characters.
Yeah. Like interesting person number 1. And interesting person number 2.
Yeah. It's great. Because it's also like sometimes I feel like they're placeholder names and then they just never bother to go back for them.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, just, there's interesting person number 1 and interesting person number 2. We'll figure out other names for them later.
Or like the people who do multiple voices, and just like, oh, like one's Green Goblin, or the voice actor for Green Goblin also plays or does a character just called Last Dude.
I love that. I love that so much.
Yeah, and then you just get the people grouped in with other voices.
Additional voices, They're the ones who've done like 1,000 other things, and like if we listed all of the characters you did, first off, we'd run out of names, and second of all, you would be the credits. That'd be it.
That was all I had for this minute.
That's all I have for this minute as well. Thank you all for listening. Catch us on Wednesday with Minute 110. Until then, thanks for listening.
Bye.